The Diner Lesson. The Bluebell Diner sat at the heart of Willow Creek, a sleepy American town where the morning sun filtered through gingham curtains and the air smelled of fresh coffee and sizzling bacon. For the locals, the diner was more than a place to eat. It was a sanctuary of routine, where stories were swapped over plates of eggs, and the clink of silverware was a comforting soundtrack. The walls, lined with faded photos of the town's past, whispered history, and the elderly regulars, with their familiar faces, brought it to life. But on one crisp autumn morning, the diner became the stage for a confrontation that would ripple through the town and leave one woman forever changed. Marjorie Ellis, a newcomer to Willow Creek, wasn't one for small talk. At 52, she'd built a life of efficiency, always rushing from one task to the next, her phone buzzing with emails and reminders. She'd moved to town a few months ago, drawn by the promise of a quieter life, but she hadn't quite settled into its rhythms. That morning, she stepped into the Bluebell Diner, her heels clicking on the linoleum floor, her eyes scanning for an open booth. The place was packed with the usual crowd, retirees sipping coffee, a farmer reading the local paper, and an elderly couple whispering sweet nothings in the corner. Marjorie, arms crossed, felt out of place in the slow, cozy hum of it all. As she waited, her gaze landed on a woman entering the diner. Evelyn Harper, in her late 40s, carried herself with a quiet grace that seemed to hush the room. Her clothes were simple but neat, her face pale, her eyes shadowed with an almost tangible grief. She moved slowly, as if each step required effort, and Marjorie couldn't help but notice the way she kept her head down, avoiding attention. Evelyn approached the counter, where the waitress, a warm older woman named Doris, greeted her with a smile. Evelyn reached into her purse, pulled out a crumpled meal voucher, and handed it over, her voice soft, almost inaudible over the diner's chatter. Marjorie's curiosity piqued. She'd seen Evelyn around town, heard whispers about her being a widow, but she didn't know the details, nor did she care to. Marjorie wasn't one for sob stories. Her life was too busy for that. But as Evelyn sat at the counter, carefully smoothing the voucher before handing it to Doris, Marjorie felt a flicker of disdain. The voucher, likely from a local assistance program, was a stark reminder of Evelyn's struggles, and to Marjorie, it screamed weakness. Without thinking, she let out a low, derisive snort, loud enough to turn a few heads. A smug smile curled her lips as she muttered, just loud enough for Evelyn to hear. "Guess your husband didn't leave you much, huh? That voucher's all you've got." The words hung in the air like a slap. A few patrons glanced over, their expressions a mix of shock and disapproval. Evelyn didn't react immediately, but her fingers tightened around her coffee cup, her knuckles whitening. Marjorie, unbothered, turned back to her phone, dismissing the moment as trivial. But the diner's warmth seemed to cool, the murmurs growing quieter. Evelyn's silence wasn't just restraint, it was a mirror, reflecting Marjorie's cruelty at her. The weight of those words settled over the room, and for the first time, Marjorie felt a twinge of unease, though she pushed it down. The rest of her meal passed in a blur. Marjorie ate quickly, her focus split between her phone and the nagging discomfort she couldn't shake. Evelyn's lack of response gnawed at her. She'd expected anger, a sharp retort, maybe even tears, something to justify her jab. But Evelyn had given her nothing, just that quiet, piercing silence. As Marjorie stood to leave, she caught sight of Evelyn still at the counter, her hands cradling her cup, her face calm but distant. For a moment, Marjorie hesitated, a flicker of guilt sparking in her chest. She brushed it off and walked out, but the feeling clung to her, heavy and unshakable. The next morning, Marjorie returned to the Bluebell, though she couldn't say why. The diner felt different now, tainted by the memory of her words. She scanned the counter, half expecting to see Evelyn, but the spot was empty. Sitting in her booth, she ordered her usual scrambled eggs, toast, coffee, but her appetite was gone. Her mind kept replaying the moment. Her smug tone, Evelyn's tense fingers, the disapproving glances. Why had she said it? Evelyn had done nothing to her, just sat there, existing in her quiet pain. Yet Marjorie had felt compelled to tear her down, as if Evelyn's vulnerability threatened her own carefully constructed world. As she stirred her coffee, Marjorie realized she owed Evelyn an apology. The thought made her stomach churn. She wasn't the type to admit fault. Apologies were for the weak, or so she'd always believed. But Evelyn's silence had exposed something in Marjorie she didn't like, a callousness she hadn't noticed before. She wanted to fix it, to erase the stain of her words, but the idea of facing Evelyn was daunting. Would an apology even matter? Could it undo the hurt she'd caused? Doris, the waitress, set Marjorie's plate down with her usual smile, but her eyes lingered, as if she sensed the turmoil beneath Marjorie's composed exterior. Marjorie avoided her gaze, picking at her food. The diner's familiar sound-sklinking dishes, soft laughter felt distant, drowned out by her racing thoughts. She didn't want to be the kind of person who belittled others, who used someone's pain as a punchline. But she had, and now she had to face it. Just as she was about to leave, the bell above the door jingled. Marjorie's heart skipped a beat as Evelyn walked in, her steps as measured as ever. She didn't look around, didn't acknowledge anyone, just made her way to the counter. Marjorie's pulse quickened. This was her chance, her moment to make things right or let the guilt fester. Her legs felt heavy, but she forced herself to stand, her breath shallow as she approached the counter. "Evelyn," Marjorie said, her voice barely above a whisper. Evelyn looked up, her eyes meeting Marjorie's with a quiet intensity. "I'm sorry for what I said yesterday. It was cruel, and I was wrong. I shouldn't have spoken to you like that." Evelyn's expression softened, but she didn't speak right away. Marjorie's face burned with shame, her words feeling inadequate. Finally, Evelyn nodded, a faint smile touching her lips. "It's okay," she said, her voice steady. "We all have moments we're not proud of. Thank you for saying that." Marjorie nodded, her throat tight. She turned and walked back to her booth, her heart a mix of relief and lingering unease. Evelyn's forgiveness was genuine, but it didn't erase the weight of what she'd done. Over the next few days, Marjorie couldn't stop replaying the exchange. She'd apologized, yes, but it felt like a half measure, a bandage on a wound that needed more to heal. Evelyn's grace, her ability to let go without resentment, made Marjorie question herself. She'd always prided herself on being strong, independent, above the fray. But strength, she realized, wasn't about never faltering, it was about owning your mistakes and growing from them. Determined to do better, Marjorie returned to the Bluebell a week later. She spotted Evelyn in a booth near the back, alone, her meal voucher tucked beside her coffee. Marjorie's nerves flared, but she couldn't walk away. She approached, her hands trembling slightly. "Evelyn, can I sit for a moment?" she asked. Evelyn looked up, surprised but not unwelcoming. "Of course," she said, gesturing to the seat across from her. Marjorie sat, her words tumbling out. "I've been thinking about what I said to you, and I can't let it go. I was wrong, not just for saying it, but for thinking I could judge you without knowing you. I want to be better than that, and I'm trying to learn from this." Evelyn listened, her gaze steady. When Marjorie finished, she leaned forward slightly. "Marjorie, you don't have to keep punishing yourself. Mistakes don't define you, what you do after does. You're here, trying to make it right. That's what matters." The words hit Marjorie like a lifeline. She blinked back tears, overwhelmed by Evelyn's kindness. "Thank you," she whispered. "I don't deserve that, but thank you." Evelyn smiled, a warmth in her eyes that Marjorie hadn't seen before. "You're welcome. Just keep going, Marjorie. That's all any of us can do." Marjorie left the diner that day with a clarity she hadn't felt in years. She couldn't undo her words, but she could change how she moved forward. Evelyn had shown her that true strength lay in vulnerability, in forgiving others and yourself. It was a lesson Marjorie vowed to carry with her, not just in Willow Creek, but in every interaction, every moment of her life. As she stepped into the crisp morning air, Marjorie felt lighter, as if a burden had been lifted. She wasn't perfect, and she didn't have to be. But she was trying, and that was enough. The Bluebell Diner, with its worn booths and faded photos, had given her more than a meal. It had given her a chance to grow, to become the person she wanted to be. What did you think of Marjorie's journey? Have you ever witnessed or experienced a moment of cruelty or injustice that changed how you saw someone or yourself? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Let's talk about how we confront unkindness in our lives and what it means to seek redemption. Your perspective matters. Join the conversation.